Hello, good evening. Let's get started. I'm so excited to welcome everyone today, our panelists, our alumni panelists, and our guests for an evening of conversation about building a career in sustainability. Today we have 5 LMU alum who have made an impact in the field of sustainability throughout their careers, and we want to learn a bit about how they started and developed their sustainability-focused careers in such diverse fields as textiles, fashion, technology, electronics, and construction. So tonight we'll hear about what they're currently working on, what they see as particularly important opportunities and challenges within the industry and their fields. And finally, they're going to share some advice with all of us about their best approaches for building a career in sustainability. And so I will introduce our panelists and then ask each of our panelists to say a little bit more about themselves. We have Ernie Roberts, who graduated from Science and Engineering. Right there, Ernie, thanks. He is head of global sustainability at Belkin International. Emily Pan, hi Emily, is graduated also from Science and Engineering, and she's the director and chief of staff at Verdical Group. Mara Lay, hi Mara, graduated from Science and Engineering, and she's a sustainability manager at Vuori Clothing. Saul Menjivar-Peña,
Hey guys.
graduated from CBA, and he's corporate partnership manager at Plug and Play. And Will Portman also graduated from CBA and is a graphic designer at Ambercycle. So thank you to all of you so much for coming today. Now, if you wouldn't mind, could we start by just hearing a bit from each of you about your current role and current industry, and tell us a little bit about your time at LMU and the beginnings of your jobs in the sustainability field. And would anyone like to start, or shall
I guess I can go first.
Okay, thanks, Will.
Sure. Is this working? Test. All right. Well, my name is Will Portman. I just graduated class of 2022, so clearly I'm the baby up on the panel. But yeah, I was a major in marketing in the M School program, content creation, and with the studio arts minor, focusing on graphic design. And as you said, I'm the graphic designer for Ambercycle, which is a material science startup here in Los Angeles. And we are focusing on changing the way that humanity interacts with textiles and trying to reduce waste in the fashion industry. And right now we are focusing on making different types of regenerated polyester fabrics. What else? A little bit about my
Right, what's that leap from LMU into this
right,
career?
yeah. This is my first job out of university, so I'm still very much fresh-faced, but I think my time at LMU allowed me to really explore and find my passion, which is these intersections of business and sustainability, and also visual communications, and the power of visual communications to kind of engage your stakeholders and get people to sign up for the cause. So yeah, I just think it was the perfect time to kind of develop all of these passions and then find a cool place to develop them out of school.
Thank you.
I'll go next. So yeah, my name is Ernie Roberts. I graduated in 2010 from LMU, environmental science. I was actually studying and working in sustainability as an analyst at Belkin when I was going to school here. So I was kind of working, doing both at the same time. I started the department at Belkin and then built it up from there. Yeah, so I was able to apply a lot of the stuff I learned here, at LMU, obviously, to what I was doing in the professional world. Belkin is a leader in consumer electronics. We sell globally, which means we have a really large environmental footprint in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of waste, so on and so forth. So a lot of that falls into my purview, and my responsibilities is how to manage that effectively And then also decarbonization strategies, measuring and monitoring that, and we've been doing that for over 15 years now. Yeah, so that would be.
Can you ask one follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit, like, how has your career shifted from when you first graduated from LMU until now?
Oh, leaps and bounds. So, yeah, so I mean, I was just an analyst when I started my sustainability journey. And it was really just data collection and data like calculations and stuff like that. Slowly but surely, the demand for what I was doing grew in the organization and from our customers. So we had to pull in more resources to do that. And so it just naturally followed suit to get engineers and so on and so forth. And then before I knew it, I had like 3 or 4 engineers on my team. And then we were really making some meaningful progress and meaningful change. And it's really accelerated the change that we wanted to do.
Thank you. And Emily, do you want to share a little bit about
Yes. Oh, wow. Okay. Hi everyone. Emily Hand. So I graduated in 2014 with a major in natural science and a minor in environmental studies. I don't think natural science exists as a major anymore at LMU, but it was a really great option for me because it gave me a lot of flexibility and I was able to sort of customize the classes that I chose to take, which I appreciated. So I took everything from urban planning to a course in engineering, sustainability, and LEED, which is what I focus on now today at Verdical Group. So I had a lot of flexibility, which was great. I also worked in the Office of Sustainability on campus during my time, which is good to have exposure to all of the initiatives that were going on campus. And so I think at the time I forget my exact title, but I worked on the website and did social media for Green LMU. So it's definitely transformed a lot since I had access to it, but I think I still get like the Facebook notifications and whatnot. So, but anyways, so that was a really great experience for me too. I started interning at Verdical Group, my current firm, when I was a senior. So I think it's been exactly about 10 years since I had started my internship. And Verdical Group, just a little bit about us. We are a full service sustainability consulting firm. So we primarily work in the built environment, and sort of tagging on to what Ernie is working on, we really focus on decarbonizing the built environment. So we are working closely with architects, general contractors, engineers to help make building projects more sustainable. We also work with clients on a corporate level as well, working towards creating ESG reports and other things like that. And so yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you so much. Mara?
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
I'm here.
Can you guys hear? Okay, cool. Anyway, hi everyone, I'm Mara, and I, like Kathy mentioned, graduated in environmental science in 2014, and no, 2018, sorry, not Emily's year. But most recently I actually graduated with my MBA from LMU as well in 2022, so that's super exciting. So I'm both like Frank Seaver and what is the business school called? CBA, I don't know. Anyway, so happy to be here and represent both colleges. But when I was at LMU in my undergrad, I was studying environmental science and I was really interested in working in sustainability, but at the time it kind of didn't really exist, I would say. And I told all of my professors that that's what I wanted to do. And they're like, are you sure you don't want to be a scientist? Like there's like no jobs like that. And I was like, no, I promise you there are. So similar to Emily, I basically customized my experience and I ended up being able to work with a professor in CBA, and I learned like life cycle assessments, and I did my whole thesis project doing life cycle assessments on 7 different coffee makers. So that was a really cool intersection. I also worked at Green LMU, similar.
And I also was in ASLMU, and one of the biggest things that I did before I went and became vice president of ASLMU was I wanted to install more water bottle refillers on campus. And so I worked closely before I was also in Green LMU with Ian McEwen, who's still over there. And I said like, hey, let's set up a survey to understand where students need water bottle fillers. And so we set up those water bottle refillers, and that was a really cool experience. So fast forward where I am now, I'm at Vuori. Vuori is an athletic athleisure apparel wear brand. If you guys aren't familiar, we're focused on making high quality impact clothes that are hopefully better for the environment. And just really soft products. So if you guys do know us, like we make really high quality soft clothes that people want to wear. But we're a California Encinitas based brand, and because of that, there's like a natural environmental proponent of it. And so our customer automatically thought we were sustainable. So it was a very interesting place to be as a brand. So prior to me being there, they were like, oh, we need to do something about this because our customer wants it and our customer thinks we are here. So they did a lot of volunteer work on the side, and then I came on board, and now I work on building out the department as well as managing our decarb strategies, monitoring our greenhouse gases, really focusing on decarbonizing through the products that we're making. So really focusing on fibers. And that's actually where I've met Will before at Ambercycle, because we're trying to do a partnership with Ambercycle as well. So yeah, a little bit about me.
Yeah,
Right.
very much so. Nice synergy, and thanks for the water bottle fillers, they're great. And Saul?
All right, yeah, Saul Menjivar. So open up with I wouldn't be 75% of the man I was if I didn't go to LMU. So you guys have a really good time over here and really put yourself out there, and LMU was an amazing time. Yeah, nowadays I work at Plug and Play Tech Center. It's a VC firm in Sunnyvale. Some of our most notable investments have been PayPal, Lending Club, Soundhound. It's like Siri, but inside Mercedes-Benz, Manscaped, and we have a bunch of other unicorns in the portfolio. We have three pillars of Plug and Play. We're a corporate innovation platform. We make investments through our VC arm, and we have accelerator programs. Will, your startup Ambercycle is actually in our ecosystem. To introduce probably your CEO and sales people to the likes of Mitsui Chemical and some of those corporate partners I've actually communicated with. So nice to more full circle activity over here. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's if you have any other follow-up question, proceed.
Well, just tell us, how did you get from an LMU CBA student to where you
Oh yes, yeah. So I actually got a finance degree, and my junior and senior year, I was doing this finance internship, and I was like, yeah, I can't do this for 10 to 20 years, and I'm glad I came to that realization. I always enjoyed being around people, and sustainability kind of, I was with the growing trends of it from 2014, 2018, when I was going here. I was like, all right, this could be cool. I think I really want to make an impact to the environment, climate change, everything going on. So when I moved back, I left LA 4 years ago, back to the Bay Area where I'm from, Menlo Park Hall to Stanford area. I interviewed with my CEO of the firm, and he placed me. He was like, all right, go find a team. I was like, all right, how's that gonna go? And I interviewed with two guys of the firm. One of them was the sustainability team, and I knew nothing really about sustainability. Him and I were connecting. We had a good tennis connection, of a good tennis background, and so he was like, all right, let's go. You're gonna join my team. And I was like, all right, if I could be completely honest, big team member type of person. So if I could be completely honest with somebody, I could just tell them, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and I trust them. And so, yeah, since that day on 4 years ago, I knew nothing about the industry, took it one day at a time. And yeah, now I work with big corporations of Fortune 500, 1,000 companies, helping them with their sustainability initiatives and innovation initiatives, and help them execute what their strategies are. So I work with VC teams, strategy teams, innovation teams, corporate development teams, the list goes on, but my usual day-to-day conversations are with C-level or SVPs, really like absorbing information and seeing how we can help them make an impact through our store ecosystem, which we've done well with his company. And so the reason why some of the best and most attractive startups come to us is because these corporations are huge, and to innovate and to make those changes in the industry, they're just so slow. Getting new ideas, cutting edge technologies. So that's what we do at Plug and Play. We source the best startups for them and hope that they invest in them, that they do pilots and POCs, commercial agreements. Whatever your strategy is, I'm sure we can help you out. Yeah, but that's how I got to what I'm doing now, 4 years later.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. It's so helpful for all of us to hear a bit of your stories and think about our next moves into sustainability. We were hoping you could talk a little bit about what you see as the key issues and trends in your industry right now, and how your company's work relates to this. Now, it's kind of a broad question, but would anyone like to jump in? I feel like such a teacher.
I can jump in.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So yeah, there's definitely headwinds especially in tech for us. We have such a large footprint. We create a lot of products that have a 2-year life cycle, and that ends up becoming e-waste after 2 years. So it's a really like kind of a fast moving industry, and we're creating a lot of stuff, and then that stuff needs to be managed responsibly. So every effort that we do, we try to be really sincere and accurate and data driven about a lot of the stuff we do. And I think we have to be mindful about that footprint that we have, and then how we're being responsible with that footprint. Because I think there's also a lot of people in other industries, including ours, that tend to greenwash and like overstate what they're doing and whatnot. So I think for us, like I've worked really closely with our marketing and our PR teams to really keep the tone of the message about what it is and the impact that it's having, but also being mindful that we still have a long way to go, and we're on this journey to reduce our impact, reduce our waste, reduce our emissions. So
Thank you.
I can add to that. I think this is not just like a fashion textile industry situation, but I think in general, we're seeing a lot of the regulations coming down, which are going to affect all companies. So whether or not you have a sustainability team, and if you operate in California, there was 3 bills that were recently passed. So SB 261 and SB 263 and like AB 1305. I never knew I was going to get into all these regulations also my job. But anyway, all these regulations are, if you're operating in California, you are going to have to disclose some of this information. So making sure that you know how to calculate a greenhouse gas inventory and doing it to the greenhouse gas protocol, or understanding what the risks are to your business from climate, or what your risks are to the climate. Those are things that like companies are going to have to go through and disclose right now. So I think Vuori is in a really good place. We've done a lot of this legwork, which makes me happy. And when my legal team saw this, they were like, "Oh my God, what's happening? Do we know how to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, don't worry. Like I've already done it all." That's not being for all companies. And so I think it's going to be a really hard thing in general. And that's a big trend. And so that kind of goes to what Ernie's saying about just waste in general and being mindful of how you talk about it, because there are being more disclosures and regulations around this, that you're going to see a shift within the market of how people talk about it and what they say, versus just going out there and saying, "Oh, we're climate neutral," or like we're carbon positive. Like you can't just throw out these words anymore. And so people need to be really cognizant of what they're saying. And I think that's for all industries.
Yeah, I'd say nowadays it's all talk and like more for PR purposes, get the popularity out there. Since we're based in the US, I'd say we come number 2, because like the EU, they're the ones that are like actually leading the change. So it's about 2023 now, but I think the actual like impact in terms of like all entire industries, from technology, fashion, which is definitely, got to build that infrastructure, which is very slow. But it's all about, if you're the first one to do it and you have the capital, then you can actually make that change. But it's all about building that infrastructure. That's where the strategic partnerships lie. So I'd say notice corporations are rather doing more co-ventures and affecting their supply chain so that they can actually do that. And be thoughtful of like how it starts from the beginning to the end, but how that is also gonna take like government involvement and also the environment in hand as well too. But I'd say we as a US tend to look at the EU and then react from there. So they're probably gonna get traction probably 2018, 2033 or so. Us probably a little slower, maybe 10 to 15 years. The reason why I say this is because we had a big event at the PepsiCo HQ, one of our partners, and a big scope 3 event, top leaders from 40, 50 corporations. And yeah, we're having a conversation like, what do we need to do? And probably all these people are like, we need to do this, we need to do this. But all right, where's the execution of it? I'm hearing the same thing like for the last like 2 to 4 years, and there's no change. I like to see change in my life. So if like I she's gonna talk about the same stuff, it's like, come on guys, like we have to do something about it before it's too late or before something else happens. I don't know. But those are my observations.
I would say in the built environment sector, the built environment makes up, I think, 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. So while that seems really daunting, it's also, if you kind of flip it, there's a big possibility for impact. So I would say the biggest trend we're seeing, sort of in line with what you all have said, is I think the focus historically has been, at least in my sector, really on operational carbon. So like the use of buildings, so the energy efficiency of a building, the lights that go into a building, how it's operated and run. And so, you know, for the past, I don't know, 10 or 20 years, that's really been the main focus, is how can we make buildings more efficient? I think what's switching is really looking at embodied carbon. And so that's really looking at the materials that go into a building. And that's not only the materials themselves, but harvesting the material, transporting the material to the place that it gets manufactured, the manufacturing of that material, transporting that material to the building site, and then installing that material. So there's so much carbon that is embedded into that whole process. And then of course there's the afterlife, right? So with your products, it's very quick. It's maybe a few years. A building is obviously much longer, typically 40 or 50 years. But then how do we think about deconstructing that building or reusing that building? And so that's sort of been the focus of the narrative as of late. There was just a new California regulation as of August that is now going to be effective July of next year, that is requiring reduced embodied carbon on buildings now. So it's really exciting. California is, again, a leader, the first to do this. And so now we've really been talking to our clients about doing life cycle assessments for buildings, and hopefully also reusing buildings where we can, which is the most sustainable, right? The most sustainable building is the one that's not built. So that's been the shift in the narrative, is really not only the operational carbon of buildings, but also the embodied carbon.
Sure. Yeah. I like what you said about the most sustainable building is the one that's not built. I think at Ambercycle we share a similar philosophy that the best textile is a textile that can be used again and again and again. And jumping back to what you said about the regulation, that's not as much my area of expertise, but I would say that those factors, as well as kind of just now there's such a high demand and appetite from the kind of consumer side for solutions, and it's really pressing a lot of brands to make commitments to lower their greenhouse gas emissions and decarbonize and stuff. So I think coming to where I play in on the communications and the brand side, being able to tell really storytelling that's about the impact and about, building community and getting people, fired up in a positive way for these solutions is really important, so.
Well, thank you. I was hoping we could open it up now with some questions. If folks have questions about key sustainability issues within all of the industries we are discussing here. Oh, yes. Do we need to bring a microphone around? Or?
I'll just project.
Thank you.
I'm hearing a lot talk about carbon as primary form of waste. How much do you think that's gonna act as a smokescreen for other forms of waste moving forward for a lot of these corporations?
Touch on that, I think, a little bit. I think decarbonization is front and center just because of the climate crisis that we're in. And I think our consumers are asking us to do more and holding us accountable to that. So I think that tends to get a lot of the attention. But also, like being in the consumer electronics sector, like we acknowledge that e-waste and our plastic footprint, our, all the metals that we consume and the supply chain that goes along with all of that. So we're really mindful of that. And so we actually try to give that as much credit to the story that we tell, along with our decarbonization strategy. So yeah, we try to balance out like all of that. And like, I forgot which one you mentioned, like the life cycle analysis though, that looks at the whole footprint. It's not just, air emissions, it's water, it's soil emissions, it's really a holistic approach to like our footprint. I don't know if
Yeah, I was just gonna add, the life cycle assessments that we're doing for buildings, we use a software program called One Click LCA. It's really great. And not only are you looking at carbon emissions, but it can also generate data on eutrophication and global warming potential and other factors that my team studies. I don't particularly study them myself, but anyways, it has lots of other factors. Of course, at the moment, carbon is like the buzzword. Everybody knows that word, and that's what's most familiar to folks. And so that's, I think, been the focus, of course, but the climate, eutrophication is also very important for us, like environmental science studies people, like that was a big thing too. And I think people just don't really understand what that even means. And so it's not part of the narrative yet, but I think it will be down the road. I hope so, at least. So.
Expand on what that is.
Yeah, yes. So it's basically like runoff from land into the ocean that then generates too much algae or like growth in a particular region. And so that really affects the ecosystem, because that means that then there's going to be more creatures that come and eat the algae, and then there's more creatures that's going to eat those creatures. And so anyways, it basically just turns into this whole disruption of the ecosystem, which luckily the ocean is very vast and can often recover well from situations like that, but it's still a problem as well.
I can actually continue.
Yeah, somebody else can elaborate on
Yeah,
that.
so just an example here. So sea turtles, when they hatch from the moon, right, they go into the ocean. With cities, buildings coming through, they emit light. So then those sea turtles are going to the cities, getting attacked by birds and hawks. That kind of demonstrates how like those ecosystems are changing based on like our man-made development of the area, and that could lead into like species going to extinct. So I would say the number one that we're tackling is like, yeah, carbon decarbonization, of course. Number two, probably plastics. Plastics. Even just like making people aware and conscious of like where does the plastic go? You'd be surprised how like most of the population doesn't know like the actual. All right, if I throw this into the garbage versus like the recycling, where's that going to go now? And the people who know, they're conscious about it. People who don't, they're like, it's not, but then that's actually contributing to like all the waste that's going to the ocean, where it's not a big deal, but it's a big deal just because it's changing like the entire environment. Three, I'd say like water usage. globally, I'd say even like out of like the, the sustainable development goals, sustainable resources probably taps into like 6 of those buckets. So like, which, like Habitat Humanity, we have a partnership with Habitat Humanity out in Johannesburg, Africa, to like actually help people like, build sustainable, give them education and build things that way because they don't have the resources, but that's also like another thing too. But yeah, I think the reason why the number 1 is carbon right now is because governments, that's the first one they want to tackle. So once you get one down, it could lead into like actually tackling the other ones, but at least, that's the main one that corporates and governments are putting the resources to right now.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna caveat all of that and say that like in the past few years, there's actually been a lot of change around just carbon. So right now there's like the task force for carbon related disclosures, which is TCFD and then there's the task force for nature-based disclosures, which is TCFD. I don't know, there's like alphabet soup in this. But anyway, there's like nature-based disclosures that are happening as well. And like CDP used to be just a carbon focused like questionnaire that companies had to fill out from their investors. But CDP now has like a water focused one and a forestry one. And so like you're definitely seeing companies think about like we can't look at carbon in a myopic view. We need to look at everything holistically. So making and setting biodiversity targets versus just setting a carbon target. So if you start to see that, like it's gonna start emerging and it's not just gonna be carbon. I think it's just new, but also back to carbon, like we've been doing it for so long, but yet we're still so new. Like a lot of people don't even know how to do carbon measurement. And so I think it's a weird place to be in the sense of like we want to do more, but we can't even do what we have set out to do in the first place for a lot of things. So like how do you balance trying to set and solve carbon targets when you can't even like do that yet, and then you want to set a nature-based target? So I think that's just like generally what I'm seeing.
Good question, Johan.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing your journey. I'm a faculty member here, and I sort of identify myself as a sustainability scholar. And then the big question that I have had is that how much power like a sustainability divisions, departments, or I don't know, like like a sustainability managers have within their organization? Because this question sort of leads to my like another big question: how companies actually achieve a balance between profitability and sustainability metrics. And based on my observations, especially even like large corporations, whenever they face with like a bad financial performance or like a poor profitability, they are likely to, I guess, reduce like investments in some sort of sustainability metrics because that's not their like a prioritized organizational goal. So I was just curious like how your experience has been within your organization.
I can start, and I think Verdical Group is a little bit different than the other companies represented here. We're a certified small business, but I would say we have really set up the company to walk the talk. Obviously, we do sustainability consulting, so if we're not sustainable ourselves, that would be sort of a waste. So we originally kind of set the company up as do good and do well. We wanted to give back and also give back through the work that we're doing, and also through the company. So we are a certified B corporation. If you're not familiar with that, I highly recommend looking into it. It basically means that we meet certain environmental and social metrics and transparency with our company. So you may have heard of like Patagonia, or Ben & Jerry's, some of these. There's many different, I think there's over, 2,000 companies that are certified B corporations. So that has really helped us, I would say like navigate down that path. But I also think that it's challenging because it really comes down to policies that are part of the company. And so larger companies or corporate companies if they haven't started out that way, then it can be really challenging to like change everything and go after all of these new policies and whatnot. What else can I say? I think part of that, I guess I should also mention is giving back to environmental nonprofits. And I think just, encouraging our team to kind of lead the way with the work that we're doing. We're not perfect, but it is challenging though. I mean, I think we do put a lot of effort and time into being sustainable as a company, but we also have to be profitable as well. So it can be a challenge. I don't know if anyone else has.
Yeah, I can dive in here. So I can speak on depends industry to industry. So an example would be fintech, insurtech. Probably not that important right now. It's been real soft. It's soft tech, right? Plug and play, we provide solutions. So the teams I cover are food and beverage, materials, chemicals, packaging, waste management, sustainable fashion brands. So I can, from my understanding, is that there's sustainability goals. They're defined and laid out 2030, 2035, 2040, right? 2023. So if they don't hit those goals, they'll fail, which would mean that they're going to get taxed and punished. But also, like, all the regulations are getting defined nowadays. But it's just a matter of like, I think those areas are the ones that are actually, all right, let's dive in and let's get into it. Whereas like, there's so many different industries out there where it's probably not that much of a priority. I'm sure Ernie can speak more on like the e-waste area where it's like, I don't know that area that well. So I'm sure you can elaborate more on that. But I think it just depends from industry to industry. But those areas I think are the biggest ones right now where it's like, all right, we actually need to do something about it.
Okay, I'll add a few comments. So when I started in my career, when we started the sustainability department at my company, it was really more R&D type work. It wasn't necessarily something that we were developing or we were developing, but like it wasn't something we were communicating and talking about like publicly. Now, it's really table stakes. Like we have to be profitable, right? Like we want to do the right thing, but we have to stay in business, so we have the ability to do the right thing. There's a little bit of a tension between those two objectives, but that's kind of the direction that we go. And then now, like, we're seeing customer demand for adding recycled content to your product, for plastic-free packaging, or any of these types of initiatives. But we've already done the homework on that, building into it. So it was easy to kind of roll those in, like, hey, if we want this business, we already have these solutions available that we can, roll in. But they cost more, so there's a business case that has to be made for a lot of those decisions that we do. But in my experience, the demand for it has really driven the business to kind of do the right thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I like to say in terms of like how much influence does a sustainability professional have? I think sustainability professionals, like in reality, we're like cheerleaders, or we are people who are bringing people together to make the right decision. To be honest with you, I don't think, and this is really sad of me to say, but I don't think sustainability professionals have that much sway in terms of what changes are actually being made. So I view my job in a sense of saying, like, giving people the tools they need to make the right decisions and how they're going to do that. So I work very closely with our materials and design teams to like create fiber guidelines to showcase like which fibers and fabrics are lower impact than others and why should they choose those. And so in the end, they're going to make the right decision for the business. Whether that decision happens to also be for the environment might not be the case. And like in an ideal situation, you would be doing that. Like Patagonia, for example, like that's their main thing, and that's why their shareholder is like the earth. Because otherwise you're always, like holding yourself accountable to your shareholders or to your investors, and they want to make a profit. And so, I mean, in an ideal world, yes, it will be profitable. But we are seeing a lot of like conversations that are happening right now where I'm saying like, we need to go to bio-based synthetics, and they're like, well, we can't do it because margin is too high. And we can't do that because this is gonna change this. And so I think it's like a constant battle that I'm facing right now. Hoping that one day, like scaling solutions like Ambercycle or scaling, just general textile to textile recycling or anything that's happening in the industry will allow that price to come down. So it will be cost neutral, will allow those decisions to be easier. But I just try to create like the solutions and the tools that they need to help make the right decisions.
Yeah, so the company that I'm at, Ambercycle, like the co-founders, Shane and Moby, they just wanted when they decided to start the company, they just wanted to tackle one of, the largest issues that humanity is facing. And the issue that they kind of landed on was waste in the fashion or textile industry. So really the company from its founding was very focused and dedicated to this goal. So I feel like everyone that's there, is like-minded and very driven by this. So I have a lot of respect for all my, colleagues and stuff that we're all on this mission together. But I think, as a material company, we're trying to kind of change the way that the industry is, working with materials, working with, brand partners such as, for example, Vuori, or a few weeks ago we announced we did a capsule collection and also a strategic partnership with Inditex, which is the parent company for Zara. Which is pretty much as big as it gets in our industry. So being able to work with partners with as big of a reach and influences them will, help us scale our material and be able to, work with other brands in the future and be able to, overall lower the waste issues in fashion. So.
Thank you. Sure.
So I know green accounting is a thing in Europe, right? Like you were saying, in Europe, they're much more into sustainability and the whole green conversation than we are in the US. So what I don't understand, and I guess my question is to you, Saul, when you're hearing large companies like Pepsi-Cola being like all talk and no action, and I'm like, I know they're in Europe, I know they're in Australia, I know they're in these other realms where they care about the stuff that they're just much more hardcore. So is it just that their different divisions don't talk to each other? That's what I'm curious about. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, 2 points there. So you think the divisions don't talk to each other, but when they're that huge, they're like their own silos from my observations. Like, so I have really good partners where Toso, a big chemical company, for example, our champion. He's the SVP of investments, ventures, and business development, right? So he has a great relationship with his boss, who's number 3 of Toso Japan. It's really good. He goes back and forth to Japan, right? I'd say he's one of my favorite partners because he has a really good way of activating all these business units to be like, all right, what are you actually looking for? What are your current problems? So that's a good example. A bad example would be, this company, Owens Corning, it's in the roofing space. They actually don't do a good job, they actually do a good job. My other colleagues have other examples where our partnership's like 2 to 3 years usually. They have a hard time activating the business units because they're very, on the R&D side, super technical. We're the experts, so why would we look at any other new solutions? We're fine over here. And it's like, no, through your corporation is paying us as plug and play to look at new technologies, but they're not open to it. So at that point, it's all right. We can activate the other business units to get in touch with us, right? That's just the reality of how huge they are. Like these companies probably have 20 to 100K employees. All right, so imagine, your day-to-day, right, out of the faculty at LMU, probably 20 to 50, right? You can access them, you can walk into their office and talk to them. Now imagine, so then globally, imagine how much more difficult that would be, but also their P&Ls are separated differently, US, EU, Japan. So there's also that, so how that's laid out on the paper is very different. So some organizations are really good and they have a very good collaborative centralization in some organizations are really bad, from my observations. But I'd say that my point was, a little bit based on my observations from the food and beverage, materials, and waste management sector. Those are the only sectors I can speak on.
Right, and I just add a little something to it too. So we're a global company as well. We have offices in Amsterdam, UK, Australia, Hong Kong, all over the world. And they all have their own product management teams. And so oftentimes they are siloed and they are meeting the demands of what they have in region. But a lot of times also we make products that we want for economy of scale and efficiency, we need to make it a global product. So if we're making a charging cable, for example, like we can use that charging cable throughout the world. So we have to meet those same regulations in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, in US. So it has to meet all the requirements around the world. There's certain instances where it doesn't have to do that, and then we would make the decision if we want to make it global or not. But it does influence the like what happens in Europe, what happens in other regions, definitely like has an impact on what we do and the decisions we make at headquarters.
I'm gonna say, and I feel like all I'm talking to you guys about is regulations and frameworks, but there was a new one passed in Europe, which is called CSRD. And CSRD is like a big European regulation that's happening. And so like if, I don't know the exact revenue threshold, but if you are a company based in the US who meets a threshold in Europe of revenue, you actually have to report to that framework. And so that framework is very extensive. And so like, I think Pepsi Cola, for example, is going to have to do that regardless. And so US based brands who operate in the UK or anywhere else are going to have to do like double materiality and understand and like all the little things that are coming from CSRD that even if they're not doing it in the US and not operating in California, they're going to have to do that because they operate in Europe. So.
That was my point. Didn't do a good job of explaining that.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you guys all for being here. I'm a senior EMBS major, and it sounds like the experience of sustainability professionals in the corporate world is kind of comparable to modern day climate change scientists, where you are producing super meaningful work, and then it's kind of falling on deaf ears. I know, Mara, you mentioned it's kind of a battle to make an impact, and people are too focused on margins. So you questioned where the execution is. I guess my question, and it's a little bit more philosophical, but do you all believe, like deep down, that the corporate sector can step up to the challenge of keeping emissions below 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius? Or are short-term profits too important? And are we going to have to rely on, some external mediator to come in and save the day?
To take that
I'll go. I'd say yes, but it's just a matter of like when, like what time. Each markets go about it differently. Why do you think the EU is like the leading? They're actually, we need to do this. Here are all the regulations, right? And then we're just probably 2 or 3, 4 years behind the EU. And then, all right, that's just the US. We're like, all right, we need to catch up, because that's how we do it, I guess. But I think eventually, maybe different speeds for depending where you are in the world. I would hope so. I want to, because why are we spending all this time and resources to actually doing it? But I think it comes down to a matter of when, and depending on the industries, maybe banks and all that probably going to take a lot longer. But yeah, that's what I can say on that.
All right, I'll take it. So yeah, I think, Saul, I think you're right. Like I think we corporations will do the right thing eventually. I think they're kind of they're going to have to if they want to stay relevant. I think that's really it really is like a table stakes kind of thing. One example of that I'll give you guys is I was traveling to Hong Kong once for a business trip, and there's a typhoon that just ripped through that city right before I landed, and it was devastating. Like there was trees over the roads, like and we still landed, and I was able to get to my hotel and everything, but it was a huge disruption to our entire supply chain, and how we make products and manufacture products and get them onto the boat and ship them. And it took us a few months to recover from that. And that affected our bottom line. And I think that's where the company really started to pay attention, is like, this is a real threat, this is serious. And we need to build resiliency in our supply chain and in our operations to make sure that we, don't have these disruptions like that happening again.
I think just adding on to that, is like looking at the flip side, looking at the cost of not doing anything and not doing it in time, I guess, it is a perfect example. And I think that people haven't fully wrapped their head around that. So I think the narrative may need to, and that sounds really like doom and gloom and all the things, but just what is the world going to look like if we don't do anything, or if we don't do it in time? And also for companies, what is the cost of not doing anything? For that's a perfect example. Like, how is that going to impact your day-to-day in your business, and what other costs are you going to incur by not doing X, Y, and Z?
Thank you. Yes,
I push it for Ernie job. I'm in the executive delegate program. So Ernie, you touched on it a little bit. We're doing a lot this year with plastics. So I'm just curious. I've had some Belkin stuff over the years. You guys make good stuff, but I assume it's all petroleum-based plastic right now. You guys aren't dabbling at all with bioplastics or anything like that, like PHAs or PLAs. Is that even in discussion with you guys?
Yeah, we do a lot of research and development. I can't talk about specifics around some of that, but you're right. Like, a lot of the products that we have is made with petroleum-based plastic, and that's where we started from. We recently launched this year a lot of post-consumer recycled plastic, and we incorporated that into our housing for our products, and that's the first step we've taken. And we have researched, bioplastics and all the other alternatives out there. I was just looking at a leather material that was made from cactus, that we could potentially incorporate. And so it's a matter of finding the right fit. Because we make power supplies and like that type of stuff, there's certain flammability, there's like drop test requirements that we have to meet. So when we looked at the bioplastics, they tend to not be as durable as some of the other ones. And then you lose that circularity story of recycling as well. So there's definitely trade-offs to looking at both. And then we just have to find the right fit for what we do. But LCA is a critical part of that as well. So like, we look at the full environmental impact of each of those materials, and then from that we try to decide like how it fits in there. So far we started with PCR, post-consumer recycled. But that's just the first step. There's obviously more to go and more.
Are you guys worried about, like, Europe is going into mandating recyclable stuff a lot faster than we are? I know, like you said, you make products ideally that you can sell here and there without having to modify them. So are they worried about being able to, are they watching European regulations in this process?
Absolutely.
Thinking about how they're gonna stay relevant?
Yeah. So, we have been subscribed to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, for years now. And actually, there was a big educational piece that my team did throughout the organization just to talk about product circularity and the circular economy and, the shift of that. I don't know if it fully resonated with the execs yet, but they're going to get it, like, eventually, because it is, like what I said before, it is becoming table stakes to do that. So yeah, and a lot of the like opportunistic things we've done for products, to sell products into region, has come from Europe, and they're asking for plastic-free packaging. They're asking for recycled content, and so that's where it became a global initiative. That was the feedback we got from them. Australia as well, that's saying we have to do this, and Europe business operates a little bit different than US business. US business tends to look at vendors like Belkin and say, well, what do you have? And we'll decide if we want to put you in our store. But European business tends to kind of put a carrot on the, dangle a carrot in front of us, say, if you want this business, this is what we want. And so it was very prescriptive for us to say, like, okay, if we want this, business, we have to do this. And then that's where my team stepped in, like, yes, we can do it. This is what we have to do it. This is why, and all that. And then we made it work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Oh,
Yeah,
David.
we're gonna speak about careers.
We're going to switch over at 6:30 was the plan, but would you, are there any more questions about, yes, please.
I have a question for Will. So like a theme across all of like a lot of the responses tonight has been that like the story that you tell is really important for like getting people to take action. And it seems like it's also really easy for these narratives to lose their potency over time and just, through greenwashing or just saying them too much. And as someone who's in a design role, it seems like you're probably constantly communicating these ideas in different ways. And so I was just wondering, like, how do you basically keep it fresh, or like how do you go about spinning these narratives in new ways in order to get people to actually care?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First thing I'll say is I think there's still a pretty severe lack of awareness around a lot of just the facts about this. Like a lot of the design work that I do for kind of our social media outreach is kind of around like sharing these facts, about like how much clothing, is recycled per year. Like if you had to guess how much of like the global textiles are recycled every year, like what percentage would you say?
Not a lot.
Less than 1%. Yeah. So no one really realizes that, like how severe that is. So those things still need to be communicated, honestly. But in terms of like keeping things fresh, again, just working with, we're still at the stage where we're looking for partners, smaller independent fashion designers with young businesses. Like there's a lot of them out here in Los Angeles and New York. Like this summer we worked with a brand called Tom Bogo, and he's based in LA, and we gave them some fabric to use for their Paris Fashion Week show, which is really cool. So when you're bringing in, external creatives or brands, like they can bring some of their vision of how they see circularity or sustainability in, and just as well as like their own kind of, brand narrative and storytelling and stuff.
Anyone else want to add to that, or? Okay, well, David raised an interesting question that sounds like it's one that we all would love to hear a bit more about. What advice would each of you give to LMU graduates seeking a career in sustainability? Who wants to jump in first?
Yeah, sorry. I feel like I said all of those. So for careers in sustainability, I think there's more jobs out there for sustainability than there is skill. And what I mean by that is there's I get posts, from LinkedIn a lot about all these careers in sustainability and these roles that have not been filled. So I think there's definitely a market there for people to do that, but they need skill in order to do that. And one of my biggest advice to you guys is, my career here, or my journey here at LMU was amazing. I had a great set of teachers. I had great mentors that really helped and guided me throughout my academic life. Transitioning into the corporate world and into the business world, I also had really good mentors that helped guide me, to where I am today. And I really wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for some of the mentors and the management that I've had and the support that I've had, both academically and professionally. So my biggest advice to you guys is, if you guys are going into a career, or any career you go into, find the right mentor. And Saul, I think you touched on this a little bit in the beginning, is you have to have the right people that you really connect with, that are really willing to invest into you and develop into you. And then now I find myself in a position where I'm the mentor, which is really kind of cool. But yeah, like you want to find a place where you have that mentorship and that support system.
I would say, so in my particular experience, I was working for the Office of Sustainability on campus, and at the time, they were digging the hole for the new science building. So I was super interested in just learning more about that building, in particular, one, because I was super jealous of you all who get to experience that building. I was stuck in Pereira, but But anyway, so I was got in touch with the facilities director who connected me with the architect of that project and reached out, literally just sent an email and said, hey, I'm really interested in learning more about this project and particularly the sustainability of it. It's going for a LEED certification. Can you help? And she put me in contact with the lead consultant on the project. That is my boss. And so I set up an informational meeting with him. He was gracious enough to be on campus because I didn't have a car. And I set up a meeting and we just caught up for, I don't know, an hour and a half. And I think it really comes down to just finding those right connections and people that you align with. And I came out of that conversation with an internship. It was unpaid, but I knew that it was something that I was super passionate about, and I knew that I wanted to dive in, and it got me super excited because that was literally the job that I wanted to do and had been kind of seeking throughout my time at LMU. So I would say my biggest advice is don't be afraid to just go for it and reach out, and the worst case scenario is they say no or they don't reply, so I really think it does come down to building those connections with people who are like-minded, and then passing that along, like connecting like-minded people as well. And I try my best to do that as well, kind of now in this mentorship role. But like I met Mara at an event like this. And so I think just finding people that you align with and connecting other like-minded people is really important.
Yeah, also Emily just connected me with someone else who was a student that worked with her, and then I like chatted with him and I was like, oh, let me know if you want me to connect you. So anyway, but this is like my least favorite question and my favorite question, because when I wanted to get into the space, I always ask this question, and the biggest response that I got was, sadly, it was all about luck. And I think it's still kind of true, which is kind of sad to say, but like also determination and passion is super important. So I set up so many informational interviews with people, and I talked to them. I said, hey, what do you do? Tell me about it. If you have someone I can connect with that you think would be interesting for me to chat with. And I had so many meetings, and it was like junior year coming to the summer, I was waiting on an internship. I was hoping to, like, I was in the final rounds of like an internship with Sony, doing sustainability there, and ended up not getting the internship. And it was maybe end of April. So I was like, okay, everything is gonna be filled now. Like, what am I supposed to get at this point? So I just like continued my journey of doing informational interviews. And I finally was connected with someone, and I chatted with her, and instantly she was like, when can I meet you? Like, you sound great, like, when can I meet you? She started asking me interview questions, and I was like, no, I'm asking you the questions, like, you don't ask me. And so we met the next day, and she was like, I can make an internship for you. And I was like, oh my God, that would be amazing. And so she made an internship for me, and it was at Josie Marin Cosmetics. And I was doing like just sustainability intern. I helped doing a lot of events and different things and like sustainability engagement. But she's become like my biggest mentor, and full circle, like fast forward, she also like, I was working there when they dissolved the sustainability team at that company. So that was a really interesting experience. She's then worked as the director of Beauty Counter Sustainability, and then now she works at Genomatica as the head of impact. And she also moved down recently to Encinitas before me. And so she just texted me, so I was on a call with like KPMG folks, and they were like, oh, Sasha said hi, like she's excited to go to your birthday thing. And I'm like, the world is so small in sustainability. So if you continue talking to people, you will find someone that you connect with, and you will find someone who knows how you can like get in the space, whether it's right now or in a little bit later. So another quick anecdote is during those informational interviews, and once I like was let go at Josie Marin because they dissolved the team, I met with someone that Sasha had introduced me with, and I asked him the same question, like, how do I continue? Because I'm about to be a graduating senior and I really want to work in this space. And he's like, just keep trying. And a lot of people told me, like, maybe switch what you want to do, like maybe go into marketing and, work for a company that has a vision that you admire, and then maybe you can eventually switch into sustainability. And that's not what I wanted. But fast forward like 4 years later, that same person that I met with reached out to me and said, hey, I have a neighbor who wants to hire someone in apparel that's done sustainability before, and that's how I got my job. So like, I met with that person 4 years ago, and then he still remembered who I was. So like, do not take for granted the impressions that you make with the people that you're talking to along this journey. I think that's the biggest thing. The other piece of advice I will say is like, go out and get those like hard skills that people don't have yet. So like, go learn how to do greenhouse gas accounting. I figured it out by myself by reading the greenhouse gas protocol and just trying to do it. Or like, go volunteer for a company like Climate Neutral, which is a nonprofit that you can help support them and say, I've done this work. Or, I did a GRI framework like training class to understand GRI, so I could tell people I understand what that is, which is like a framework to do impact reporting. So if you have the time and the money, or the like just free time in general to go out and do these skills, I would say pursue those too, because if you can show up and say, hey, I actually know how to do this skill and a lot of people don't, you're going to be looked at higher than another person, whether or not you have a degree in environmental science. So sorry, that was super long-winded.
Just re-emphasizing one thing that you said, Mara, is going back to the connections, but literally to your point, somebody that you meet one day can become your client, your coworker, your friend, your neighbor. Like, it always comes back, I feel like. And so I think that's another thing that's really important, is to treat everybody as if they're going to be one of those people in your life. Because it will come around. And to your point, sustainability sector is very small. You run into these people all the time. So just keep that in mind as well, that they're probably gonna come up in your life again. So yeah.
Sure. Career advice. All right, I'd say intuition. Intuition is important. Just say if you're interviewing and you're like, oh no, the interview went bad, it's probably a blessing in disguise, probably not a good fit for you, honestly. So like for me, like finance background, yeah, I don't think this is for me. I want to be around people, building relationships, building connections, making deals with them, meeting new people, which I'm literally doing like right now, right? But I'd say I'm 26, so when I was like 14 to 18, I was like, yeah, I'll probably make a sustainability company in my 30s or so. That's where the world is going, trends are going. When I got hired at this job and I got placed in the sustainability team, over what you two were mentioning on, like if like, I don't know, just like seeing if you really connect with the individual you're talking to. Say when you're actually interviewing with them, like show them who you are, right? Leave it out on the table, because like they're assessing if you'd actually fit the company and the culture, which you guys are probably like 18 to 22 right now. You're probably not thinking about that. I've gotten all my roles just from like a friend connected me with them. Like, this is Saul, he'd be a great hire. I talked with them, got hired the next week. Like I've only put out, I guess, I haven't had to like put out applications just to do it. I just was like, all right, this is me. I'm trying my best. If that's what it is, I'm okay if I don't get the call back. Eventually gonna get that call back, because all right, this is Saul Menjivar. This is what he stands for. This is what he does. I came about, I guess, how I got my current role. I was hungry and I was ready to learn. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it, no questions asked. Like I'll take it one day at a time. I'm the type of person where it's like, if you're gonna do something, I'm gonna do it like 100%. Now even more. I gotta come back and push more. And then so then I was reflecting. It's been 4 years since I've been with this job. I'm like, wow, like the stars kind of aligned. I got placed in the sustainability team day 3 on the job, and I was like, all right, well, let's go do some business. Let's actually like get out there and do what I have to do. And I'd say my intuition has gotten me to where I needed to go. So that can be a kind of, you don't really know how that feels, like listen to your thoughts and emotions that are going through yourself, because that is a clear indicator of like what you actually need to do. So if something's like going on, or you're seeing this company and the leadership and the way that it's going about is not for you, get out of there. You'll find something better. There's so many jobs out there. You'd be surprised when you guys are young and energetic, and you'd be surprised, like you'll just have a really good conversation. You're like, hey, all right, can you start tomorrow? Yeah, let's go. So that's what I can say on that.
I would just say find something that you can obsess over, passionately, and that you will enjoy, that you think you can do day in and day out. I guess the long kind of the roundabout way of how I ended up at my current role is, I believe my senior year I took business sustainability and ethics with Professor Jeff Thies. I was so bummed to hear that he couldn't be here today. So wishing all the best for him and his family. But in his class, I did a research paper. We had to select an apparel company to research and write about, what they're doing in the space. And I discovered kind of all the things that Levi's is doing with their jeans and just that company. And it kind of led me to, I think, to Ambercycle, because when I was doing the research for this paper, I discovered the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and a lot of these other smaller companies such as Ambercycle that are doing, great work in the materials space. And Levi's, started doing their ESG reporting like a few years ago. So I just really got obsessed and fell in love with researching this one company, Levi's, and then that led me down this rabbit hole to the role that I'm at now. And I think part of my application for the role, I sent them the research paper that I did, and then that came up in the interview and stuff. So it all comes full circle, I guess. So
Yeah, I'd also just say just persevere and don't give up. If you think you're good for a role, as Saul was saying, you are. And a story of me was senior year, I had no job, right? And nothing lined up. I was like, what am I gonna do? I saw an internship open up at Reformation, and I was read the job description, and I said, oh my God, I'm perfect for this role. I know how to do all these things, not to toot my own horn, but I was this is me, I can do it. And so I, applied, never heard back. And I was okay, what happened? It was 2 weeks. I never got a confirmation email though that my application went through. So I was maybe it didn't go through. And so then I saw it posted again on LinkedIn, and maybe I applied through their website or vice versa, or it was on Indeed. And so I applied again, and I was hey, basically me again, you need to hire me. And then the next day they called me and they were hey, we want to interview you. You sound great for this role. And I was did you guys not get my first application? Because I knew that I was really good for this and I wanted to get this role. And so if you think you're good for something, keep pushing and persevere, because you guys know, just your intuition really knows.
We have a few minutes for questions. David, did you have?
You mentioned some hard skills. Are there other hard skills, and are there any certificates or anything like that would enhance a potential employer or anything like that?
Yeah, so again, built environment sector. Actually, one of the courses I took my senior year at LMU was the lead sustainability engineering course, and something along those lines. And part of the course itself was actually preparing you for taking this credential exam for your lead green associate, it's called. And so the whole course was really just preparing you for that, and then many folks ended up taking it afterwards. So in most of what we do on a daily basis are LEED certifications for buildings. You may have heard of it, LEED. There's lots of other credentials as well, like Fitwell and Well and all sorts of things. but I would say LEED is probably the most well-known standard out there, or rating system that's out there. And so if you are interested in the built environment sector, I would say that, taking the initiative to go after that credential and having that knowledge would be super valuable. I think it's also just good to kind of, to your point, like almost study something just to learn it, because like the studying process for taking the exam like helps you just really understand the concepts as well. And so once you take the Green Associate, then the next step is the LEED accredited professional. So that's what I have. And so anyway, that would be my recommendation in the built environment sector.
Yeah, I would just add to that, depending on what sector you're in, there's so many different certifications you can go after. And if you just do a little bit of research, they pop up and you can find them. Some of the certifications I got along my way was circular economy strategies. There was another one for packaging and plastic packaging. There were like online courses, and then they give you like a certificate at the end or whatever. But they definitely made, like, what it did for me at least is it helped align and made sure that the stuff I was studying on my own was validated by what they were teaching in that course or that certification program. So they're definitely depending on what sector you're in, there's certs out there for it. And those are great skills to have on your resume.
Are there classes for calculating carbon emissions? Since that is apparently what places are asking, and you're saying not a lot of people know how to do it.
I don't know if there's currently any like classes. I mean, I would imagine that they're popping up left and right. So I would say look out for them and see what is out there. But I think that the tools that you need are there. So like you can literally read through the whole entire greenhouse gas protocol, which is like 200 and some, I don't know, maybe more than that pages. But just understanding the concepts and the framework of like what goes into different scopes and what are the categories within scope 3 and like generally what is being asked, I think is kind of what you really need to know right now, because even people who are in the space, maybe that's all they know. Or just like seeing the tools, like the EPA has a tool to calculate greenhouse gas emissions right now, which you can download and kind of play around with. And I know another one that I would say also is like life cycle assessments. I think they're underrated, and I don't know if like CBER is doing any classes in that right now, but when I saw like the ad to do basically research doing LCAs, it was like, do you care about sustainability? Do you want to work in business? Like, this is something that businesses use. And I was like, this is interesting. Okay, cool. But like life cycle assessments and life cycle analysis is like a huge thing. And there's not that many professionals that know how to do it. So you can go out and learn those skills. You can go out and get a master's specifically like at, not to say a different school, but like the Bren School has like a huge program around environmental like sustainability and LCAs. I just hired someone from the Bren School who like literally his thesis was on this stuff. So go to learn those. If Professor Zink, I think he's maybe on sabbatical, but when he gets back, like drill him, and he probably has a new project he wants to work on, and just like read LCAs, learn how to use them, learn how to use Gabby, Spira, or like one-click LCA.
Well, yeah, I think OneClick is a paid software, but I think there's EC3 or I think that's what it's called, EC3, and then Tally is another one, and I believe those are free programs, so I'm pretty sure you can just download and bop around, figure them out.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing. I think OpenLCA is another one, and I think it's free for students to use. But for carbon accounting, all that information is public information. So GHG protocols on there, World Resource Institute, the EPA, they have a wealth of knowledge on the standards, the emissions factors, everything in there that you would need to do your own carbon accounting. So, and it's all public information. It's not like necessarily a certificate program, but there are some that I'm sure you can find. But it really is public information that you can just download and research yourself to get.
Yeah, something you guys could do is like if you have a small company or I don't know, a small firm, I think it could be a cool experience to be like, hey, I want to volunteer and like try to help you calculate your carbon emissions. Do you know what they are? And that's like a really great learning experience. And then hopefully that company can utilize that information. So if you see a company, maybe like Ambercycle, I don't know if you guys have your carbon emissions accounted for yet, but you could be like, hey, to Ambercycle, I really am interested in this, have you done this before? I wanna explore and maybe do it as a project. Unpaid and then see, and who knows, maybe you could create an internship or a job.
Yeah, I'd say there's probably sustainability professionals on YouTube who have probably like broken this down, so check out YouTube, it's a great resource, or just buy a book on it.
The internet.
Are there any more questions about careers and sustainability? Yes.
This isn't about a career in sustainability, but there's a question from Mara. Being a student in sustainability, I guess. I remember you said, when you worked at Green LMU, you created a survey for the water bottle filling stations. And I was wondering if you were important in the addition of water bottle filling stations on campus, and if so, kind of like what that journey was like.
Yeah, I actually was. I don't have like the stats on which ones were the new ones, but I think for one, for example, that was like going into U-Haul, like when you're walking on the, like from this side of campus, there's like a water filling station on the side, like near McCarthy almost, but like still closer to U-Haul. That was one of them, but my process in general was more or less saying, coming to facilities and saying, hey, there's not enough water refilling stations, we need more. And they were like, okay, cool, like where do we put them? And so I went out and I just kind of asked people to fill out the survey, and I brought back to them, and we sat down at a table and I was like, hey, it looks like these are the main places that people want them at. And so I just kind of gave them the information. I wasn't necessarily the one there to be like, hey, install it, but like they worked with obviously the installers. But that was just a really cool experience to be able to see and like show impact directly on campus. And I think that's also something that we forget as sustainability professionals, like short-term, like near-term impacts are really important. Like all of us set goals for like 2030, 2050, and like those are really difficult and hard to reach. So I think we underestimate the value of what it means to actually make an impact today. And so how can you do that, you know? And so if you see something on campus and you're like, hey, I think it could be better this way, LMU is super receptive to that information, especially because we are a smaller school. So go out and do it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
So I guess it sounded like some of you guys majored in like a non-business related majors like environmental science stuff. So I think for those who majored in like a non-business related major, especially like the majors that are pertinent to sustainability, they might have a bit of different mindset, but I realize that there are like a more increasing number of business like a majoring students, who want to become like a sustainability professional. So except including those like hard skills that you guys already mentioned, like how should business major students be prepared to become a sustainability professional, like including mindset or something like that?
Okay, can I take that? Because okay, so yeah, so like a lot of the stuff I done with environmental science major, so I had to do the data and the hard science to understand that, and the calculations of that. When I mentioned earlier that there's so many jobs out there for sustainability, and there's just lacks of skills that's there. You need designers and you need engineers to kind of develop materials and do the R&D work and the development work and that we need. But you still need program managers, you need project managers, you need marketing, you need sales. You still need all these other aspects of business to make these creations work. And I think that's where the tie-in is, at least for me and what I've learned on my journey, is we have to work together with all these other business disciplines, finance, all of them, to make a project successful and to really actually transform like a company culture. You really need everybody, involved in it. It's not just, the science guys.
I think our time is just about up. And I wanted to thank all of you for